Some interesting stuff, well, I mean, some great stuff that he's laid out here in terms of we're getting DEI out of the military, transgender ideology is gone, we're having military men back with back pay who were dismissed for not taking the COVID vaccine. Yeah. We're going to look at building our own Iron Dome. I mean, the man is on fire.
Getting DEI out of the military is such an obvious thing to do. It's amazing that it has to be done, but good on him for doing it. And it's not just that the military won't take transgendered people. They will get rid of the about 15,000 transgendered people currently serving in the military. And it makes sense in this regard. If you've got a tooth cavity, you are unfit to be deployed. If you had sleep apnea until recently, you are unfit to be deployed. If you've got any condition that requires ongoing medical care, you can't be deployed. And Trump says our military needs to be ready and it needs to be lethal. So you can't have thousands of people who are unable to be deployed because they have an ongoing medical condition that requires ongoing care. It's nothing against transgendered people. It's just that the military is not the place for them. So I think Starbucks will have a lot of people lining up ready to be employed there because Starbucks, you know, have a love for LGBT.
They do, although they are among the growing list of massive corporates that are doing away with their DEI. So who knows who they will be employing next in the lineup. But this is also a duty of care issue. If I know that you aren't fit, body and mind, well, I don't believe you to be, then you shouldn't be. If I'm taking good care of you, you shouldn't be in a high-pressure job like the military when you not being at your peak could cost somebody else and you your own life. As for the Iron Dome, I find this really interesting, right? Because the US spent $3 billion helping develop Israel's Iron Dome. They have wanted one sooner, but Israel won't share the technology. I'm like, given that they are the country that since their existence has received more foreign aid from the US than any other country on earth, you'd think they'd just give it up out of gratitude and be like, hey, we're mates, we're allies, let's share these. But they're literally like, no, you can make your own, mate. We're not letting you in on ours. Although it begs the question, because obviously the landmass of Israel versus the landmass of the US, exactly. What Trump is talking about
how do you make it happen?
Same technology, but on a scale that is... oh my goodness, 10,000 times bigger. And when you consider how much just one of the batteries costs to power the Iron Dome, my goodness, I genuinely, maybe technology has changed, but I used to have an absolute obsession with the Iron Dome, so I know a lot more about it than the average normal person. And when he's talking about one that's going to cover such a ginormous landmass, it sounds great, but in practice, I'm like, I don't know. We'll see about that one. Let me know when you've drawn up some plans.
What's interesting about the Israel situation, as I understand it, the key part of the technology they will not share with America is described as the source codes.
Yeah.
And as I understand it, they simply don't trust or didn't trust America that they could give up that information, which they could then allow enemies, if it was ever leaked, to hack into the Iron Dome, which of course is their insurance policy against destruction. And I'm not so sure that you would blame the Israelis for not trusting an American administration, particularly
given some of the previous
years. Maybe Trump is building a military that their allies might trust.
I just see that as so flippin' ungrateful. You literally exist
they're fighting for their survival.
No. Guess who's fitting the bill? The US. Do you know how many thousands
of US
benefit
greatly from having peace in the Middle East?
They only have peace in the Middle East because of the US might. Every time Netanyahu gets around with big dog energy, telling Iran this is going to be war, etc., and so on, he's not threatening with Israeli might. He is threatening because he knows he is 110,000% backed by the US. Iran versus Israel would be, my goodness, I don't know. Because when people think about Iran, they're not thinking of a nation of 90 million people. It's literally over 10 times the size of Israel, and the size of their militaries and their military might is directly reflected in the massive population difference. So trust me, Israel would never be picking a fight with Iran, threatening like Netanyahu does, without knowing we owe our lives and every inch of this land to the backing of the Americans. That's why I'm like, heck, just share the code, man.
Whatever the case,
that doesn't seem right to me.
Would you trust an administration like we've just seen in the past 4 years?
Well, Biden had probably slipped it
about a very different administration now.
We are now.
Your point,
we are now, and it's like it's a week old, so give it a little time to rebuild trust with their allies.
What do you think the Biden administration would have done with the codes? Leaked them? No, they would have just.
You wouldn't put anything beyond the Biden administration. My goodness.
I wouldn't. You know, well, the fact that we ever trusted Biden with the nuclear codes in the first place.
I don't reckon they ever
is a
gave
crazy
them to him.
Probably
That's
not
my
actually.
hot take.
Well, if they had any,
he wouldn't even know that he had them.
He had them.
I hope he didn't know. I hope he didn't know.
He had them, but they're somewhere on the beach at Delaware, and no one's been able to find them.
Well, that's it. And when someone digs them up, we're going to be in seriously big trouble. Just quickly before we move on, though, while we're talking about Donald Trump and all this DEI stuff, which he's doing away with, and of course he's causing other businesses to do away with it, have a listen to this teacher having an absolute meltdown over the fact that DEI policies are being torn up, because by not having a DEI policy, it is in some way a threat to my life. My very existence is against the idea of there not being DEI.
My name is Dr. Tracy Castro-Gill. My pronouns are they, them. I am a disabled queer Chicanekis educator and scholar in Washington State with my expertise on curriculum and instruction. These are markers that were made illegal recently in the federal government. However, my very presence and humanity is in opposition to that legislation. I want to remind us that George Orwell, in his novel 1984, warned us about limiting how we are allowed to define ourselves and our experiences, and how that allows fascism to take root.
Very sorry, that was actually tonight's episode of South Park. I mean, for goodness sake, if your existence is somehow anathema to the idea of DEI, or, you know, the DEI means that you have your job, it means you shouldn't have your job, does it not? I mean, she's just saying out loud the quiet part. If it weren't for DEI, I probably wouldn't have any employment. Well, you don't deserve the employment, do you?
That's a classic example of Trump derangement syndrome stage 5, for which there is just no cure.
No.
But the other thing that doesn't make sense, and maybe I need to be helped on this, but she describes herself as transgendered, blah, 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 Chicanaki, which is a non-binary Mexican. How can you be transgendered and non-binary at the same... That doesn't kind of make sense.
You're not supposed to question these things, Matt.
Well, I want to understand.
It's supposed to make sense. What matters is that it makes sense to her, okay? And it's her identity for her to identify however she sees fit.